Thanks for joining tonight's program, the President's Forum. We appreciate everyone for joining us. This is hosted by Maccabi USA President Jeff Buchantz. Our evening's program features distinguished panelists who will discuss the impact of COVID-19 in collegiate athletics. Our panelists are Greg Gardner, the Associate Head Coach for men's ice hockey at Mercyhurst University, Haley Mitchell, the Head Men's and Women's Swimming and Diving Coach at Occidental College, and Dr. Daniel Freeman, the Assistant Director for Athletics Advancement Alumni Engagement at the University of North Carolina, Asheville. Throughout our program tonight, if you have any questions for our panelists, please do not hesitate to put them into the chat box below in the Zoom. Okay, Jeff, all yours.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Haley, Greg, and Dan for joining us. Thanks for our guests for joining us. And I'd like to just start off by asking our three guests. Actually, it's the President's Forum, but if we have three people, technically it's the President's Threum. Oops. So I want to ask you, Haley, what is your connection to Maccabi USA? How did you get involved with us?
Yeah, so I actually think I originally just got involved from, well, I swam at the Maccabi USA games when I was young, in high school, maybe a little bit before high school, but for my trips to Israel, I think I just saw applications on a swim blog, SwimSwam, and hadn't heard much about that part of it. So I was really excited and applied to be on the team as a swimmer in 2009. So I swam in 2009 when I was in college, and that was such an incredible experience. So then I reached out to Rick, who's on the call, and said, hey, can I coach when I decided to be a swim coach? And he said no. But then it ended up that I was able to in 2017 as the junior coach. It worked out. So it was incredible again, and looking forward to doing it hopefully at least one more time.
That's great. Thank you. And Dan, how about you?
So actually, what happened with me is after my freshman year in college, I saw that another athlete at Wake Forest had gone to the games. And I was like, how did you do that? And I reached out to him, and he told me where to look. And I sent an email to just a contact email that I found on Maccabi USA. And I had a little communication and waited for the next games. And then they reached out to my throws coach, our head coach, and I was in Louisiana getting my master's. And they were like, hey, we got this call, and we wanted to know if you were interested, and you can reach out to them here. And that was where it started, and one of my biggest dreams was to compete internationally. So it was a huge dream come true, and it started from something simple when I was only 18.
And that's great. And Greg, I wanted to save you for last, because before I ask you how you got involved with Maccabi USA, you actually competed for Maccabi Canada in ice hockey. So tell us about your journey from Canada down to Maccabi USA.
Oh, I appreciate that. I grew up just outside Toronto, Canada. And I did compete for Maccabi Canada back in 1997. It was up in Matula, and they had an advertisement in a magazine saying they're for the first ever ice hockey games in Israel try out. And we thought it was a joke, but then we realized this was actually going to happen. So we drove up to Montreal after competing in Toronto, and we made the team. And it was a 4-team tournament at the time. It was Canada, United States, Israel, and Russia. And there was just one team. But by far, it was a tremendous experience. I was a freshman in college, and I still have friends that I knew before and friends that I became friends with after. And it was just a really unique experience where I could sit in the locker room with all Canadian hockey players. They were all Jewish, and it was such a different experience for me. Fast forward, almost 20 years later, I went to school in the United States in the NCAA. I met my wife, who sat in front of me in psychology class at Niagara, and I became American, and I've been living in the United States for the last 20 years. My 3 kids are American, and 4 years ago, I had an email come across saying that they're going to redo the Maccabi USA again, and I just jumped at the opportunity. I emailed the Shores, and I emailed Maccabi USA, asking if they had selected a coach yet, because my experience as a player was so great, and my daughter's bat mitzvah was coming up, and I really wanted to take part of it. And I was very fortunate that I was selected to be the open coach, and it was a tremendous experience this time as an adult to go back to be part of the Maccabi USA experience.
That's great. So I don't mean to put you on the spot, but which country gives the better swag?
Well, definitely the red, white, and blue was tremendous.
That's a good answer. So thanks, guys. So here's the next question for all three of you. Tell me a little bit about your career in collegiate athletics so far. Obviously, right now we're going through a low. Tell us about some of your great moments in your career so far. Dan, I'll start with you.
Okay, so for me, I was a 4-year varsity letter winner at UNC Charlotte in Charlotte, North Carolina, Division I in Conference USA, like Marshall, UTEP, ODU, UAB, and came in as an unrecruited walk-on and ended up breaking the school record my 4th year, my last year there. Had an incredible experience. And while I was there, you know, not just athletically, I was involved as the chair of our Student Athlete Advisory Committee. For 2 years, I chaired our whole Conference USA Student Athlete Advisory Committee, interned in the athletic department. And that was where I learned I wanted to work in college athletics. And that was such a huge thing for me, even beyond sports. And, but at the same time, it was really a good parallel, learning, you know, the hard work, being a Division I athlete and an NCAA athlete in general, and how I could take those traits and turn them into successes while I was looking for jobs. And that all began from that point there. Would you like me to talk about after that too, and where that took me, or just with that?
Tell us about your current career there, and yeah.
Okay, so from there, you know, I ended up going to Monroe, Louisiana, and being a graduate assistant, and got my master's in exercise science. And then I came back to Charlotte, North Carolina, and that was really where all the Maccabi stuff kind of really blew up for me, and I was able to train and be really successful. And I was an intern there, worked in athletic fundraising, and I worked with potential donors, current donors, alumni for the programs, and I work on ways to serve them better and add value to their lives, learn about them, their passions, and see if their passions align with ours, because that connection of passion is really what creates that support for our student athletes and the programs that we're building. And then almost exactly 2 years ago, I got the opportunity to come up to UNC Asheville, one of the only public liberal arts Division I institutions I can think of off the top of my head. And I've been up here for about 2 years. I do the same thing, working with our alumni, potential donors, lots of touch points. And I love fundraising. And I actually wrote a book that's on Amazon called The Athletic Giving Handbook because of all this experience that I've gotten and loved. And, you know, going through all those things, at the same time, I just finished my doctorate in education from East Tennessee State University about 2 weeks ago.
So thank you. So Haley, I'd like to ask you a question. You are the head coach for diving and swimming. Now, I know they're both done in the water, but they're two distinctly different disciplines. How did you become the head coach for both?
That's pretty common for swimming and diving programs. So I hired a diving coach, as most schools do. So I just oversee him. He's great. And so I don't know the ins and outs of diving. I try and know the basics of it because I think that's important, since at the end of the year they're scored together. It's kind of a strange sport, but also really similar to track and field, where there's a bunch of different things going on and a bunch of different coaches doing different things. So sometimes I am mostly a coach, and then other times I'm more of a manager. So it's fun, and I love our divers here, and that's been really great.
So what are some of the highlights that you've had in your career so far as a coach?
Yeah, so I've worked at entirely small liberal arts schools. I worked 3 years at Kenyon College in Ohio. That was my first job. And that's an awesome place. That was so amazing that I was able to start my career there. I swam at Ohio State, so I knew that the current head coach had come from being the men's assistant at Ohio State. And I was we won as a team 2 national championships for Division III, which was really great. And that's kind of how I caught the Division III bug. I just love these small schools where academics are the priority. I certainly valued my academics when I was at Ohio State, but athletics there are the big piece if you're going to compete. And so working at Kenyon, and then I went and worked at the United States Military Academy, which similarly service and academics are important. Then I spent 3 years at Davidson College in North Carolina, so close to Dan. And then this past fall, I moved out here to LA to be the head coach at Occidental. And being fortunate enough to have this job has been probably the highlight of my career. I'm really excited to lead my own program, and LA obviously has a bigger community of Jewish people than most of the other places I've lived. So I'm really excited about that as well.
Thanks a lot. So Greg, I want to ask you, how did a nice Jewish boy from outside Toronto make his way to the United States and then wind up coaching at a Catholic college in Erie, Pennsylvania?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's I think when I was a young Canadian hockey player, I was just striving to play in the NCAA, and it took me a long time to finally get a Division I commitment. I had talked to a bunch of schools throughout my high school career, and it just took a long time. And the first offer, actually the only firm offer I got, was Niagara University, which is also a Catholic school. And it was an interesting experience going to a Catholic school, being a Jewish boy, but really they brought me with open arms, and I really felt very comfortable there the entire time. It was a really good experience hockey-wise. It was a Division I atmosphere that we built the program from the ground up. It was basically an expansion program when I got there in '96. And by the time we left, we had defeated multiple nationally ranked teams, Ohio State, number 2 Michigan, Collegiate, St. Lawrence. And then my senior year, we ended up making the NCAA tournament as an at-large team, and went to the Elite Eight. It was just an incredible experience as a hockey player, and that's one of those memories. Making the NCAA tournament as an at-large team versus making it as a auto bid, there are two completely different experiences. I've made it as an auto bid, and that was really, really exciting. But making it at large when you weren't sure you're going to get in was just a terrific experience that I still remember today. The excitement in the room when our name got announced. From there we had a really good run. I was able to turn that team success into an NHL contract. I signed with the Columbus Blue Jackets and played 2 years in their farm system. I ended up playing 2 exhibition games against the Buffalo Sabres and Pittsburgh Penguins, and those were highlights in my career. And I played 2 years in the Buffalo Sabres system after the Blue Jackets contract ended up, and then I finished up my pro career playing overseas in Germany. And then when it was all said and done, I was able to turn that professional hockey career into a coaching career, where there happened to be a job lined up at Niagara, where my alma mater, and they were looking for an assistant coach. And I was about 30 years old at the time, and my daughter Ava was born overseas, and I was looking for a little more stability and looking to come back to the United States. And that was just an incredible opportunity to come back home and work at my alma mater. And 5 years later, I turned that into a opportunity to work at Princeton University, and that was just an incredible experience working in the Ivy League and living in New Jersey there. My kids still rave about all the different experiences there, the Jersey Shore and heading to the city. And it was just, for me, working at Princeton was a really incredible coaching experience for me. And then an opportunity to become an associate head coach at Mercyhurst appeared, and it was closer to home for both my wife and myself. And I've been here 6 years later. It's really been a long journey, but every year it just seems like another year to work. And I've really just enjoyed the whole experience.
That's great. It's great to get the background on all of it. Thank you for that. So here we are now at this crazy world that changed 2 months ago. So I'd like to ask all of you, how did you find out about all the closures, and how have you and your staff been handling the fact that everything shut down? Haley, I'll start with you.
Yeah, well, I think like a lot of people, the first time I thought for sure that we were going to stop spring sports and kind of shut things down was when the NBA suspended its season. I feel like a lot of people probably felt that way. Like if that big of a sports organization was going to call it quits for the season, then we were in trouble. But yeah, so that was how I originally thought about it. But not surprisingly, the next morning, our director of athletics called a meeting and said we were going to be discontinuing spring sports. And then the president of Occidental said we were going to send students home. So yeah, it was really tough. Fortunately for swimming and diving, the only meet left was the NCAA meet. We didn't have any qualifiers for D3 NCAAs this year, since I've just been hired on and building up. So obviously I was disappointed we didn't have anybody qualified, but then in the end, we wouldn't have been able to swim. So swimming and diving wasn't terribly affected this past year. I'm pretty nervous for the fall. I don't know. I mean, people haven't been able to be in pools, and I don't know if people are coming back to campus. So I'm not sure if I'm not sure what the season's going to look like this coming year. So that's been really frustrating, just like it has been for everyone, not knowing what's going to be.
Thanks. And Greg, how about you?
We had just finished our regular season, and our league was heading into playoffs, and you could start seeing all the NHL and basketball, going from playing in front of crowds to all of a sudden playing potentially with no fans, and then it just escalated so quickly to, all right, so we're going to take a pause here. And then for us, it happened when Harvard declared they were not going to continue the season and not play in playoffs, and that was a big, whoa, that's a big deal. What's happening here? All right, that team just advances, and then that just kind of spiraled, one team, next team, and then everything just got shut down. And it's funny, the first couple of weeks, like everybody else, you're just looking around going, what's happening? I can't believe that's being shut down. I can't believe we can't go here. And then, 3 weeks later, you're bunkered in your house. And it's amazing what humans can get used to, because now, 8 weeks later, we're just accustomed to this new world we live in. And it's been a really a big adjustment for everybody. Our kids have had to, our kids, our players at our school, our student athletes had to adjust to going home and studying from online remotely, and then spring training's been eliminated. They can't work out, and so just like Hallie talked about, it's the new normal. What's going to happen in the fall is up in the air. And we're just able to get back onto ice rinks. Some rinks are opening up now, and I see some of our players able to start skating now. But it's not the traditional spring that we're all used to.
And Dan, how about you?
So for me, it was a little bit different. I mean, I saw everything happening, but I was actually playing golf with one of our donors, and I got a phone call from our athletic director, and she was like, we're going to have a giant phone call with about 30 plus people in an hour. And I had to finish up with him. And that was my first piece with us, kind of feeling that out of what was happening. We'd seen Harvard, we're in the NC system. So we're in a really large system, and we work off of what the president of the NC system says. So the first piece there for us, and to make it real for me, was we had to talk about what was going to happen with our student athletes, because unlike a lot of places, our student athletes were still on spring break. And what they decided to do was extend spring break another week and allow student athletes and students to go home at that point. So it was a little bit different for us. And, it's been about 2.5 months now. And I think it's really allowing everyone to see how much you can do from home and how productive you can be. Being a little bit different, not being a coach as a fundraiser, my job is based on personal touches. So it can be pretty tough, but I keep preaching to my coworkers that I talk to and other people in sports that, it's all about normalcy and consistency, and bringing that level of comfort to donors and to staff and the people and the student athletes that you work with. Because some things change, but the way that we act and the way that we approach situations, keeping that consistency in that is really what's going to help a lot of us get through it.
Thanks. So what do you guys think about sports competing without fans in attendance? Greg, what do you think about that?
If you'd asked me, months ago, I would have said it changed the whole game, and I wasn't a big fan of it. I thought, especially in the college field, the college environments are so special, in the hockey rinks, the football, basketball, whatever. The college feel is with the band and with the students. Right now I just want to coach, and I just want to be part of a team that can participate. So I'm willing to coach and be part of any season in any type of environment, whether it's with fans or with not. Luckily, I'm just a coach and not an administrator. The NCAA's got a tough decision. Do they allow sports to happen without students on campus? Do they allow sports to happen with students on campus? To make those decisions, on message boards are easy, but to actually make those decisions as an administrator is very difficult. And I'd be just thrilled to have the opportunity to coach and play without fans, but really it is what it is. And I think everyone just wants to, move on to the next stage and feel safe doing it. And then, the best advice I received during all the athletic meetings and with all the people I deal with is, you just really just got to frame your world now in the next 2 weeks. What's the next 2 weeks going to look like? You can't really look out and what the next 6 months are going to look like. Just kind of live your life the next 2 weeks and then readjust. And 2 weeks from now is going to look completely different than what it looked like now. And it could be much, much better. It could be much, much worse. There could be a hybrid of things. So to really, to think about what the fall is going to look like in my mind is way too far. I just want to see what the next 2 weeks are going to look like and then kind of readjust from there.
Thanks. Haley, what do you think about playing in front with no fans?
Yeah, I mean, really similarly to Greg, if you would have asked me when this all started, I would have said that's kind of silly in the spirit of college athletics, but now I'm totally on board with it. I just think any steps we can take to getting people back to competing is a good thing. For swimming and diving, I think our crowds are not the biggest of college sports, so at some places it wouldn't make that big of a difference. But I mean, I think there's going to be challenges brought on by that for like profitable sports like football and basketball that are going to trickle down to D3, even though our football team isn't necessarily for profit. But so I'm a little concerned about that financially, but in terms of wanting to get back into the pool and compete, I'm all for competing with no fans.
How is this affecting your recruiting, Haley?
It hasn't been too different right now. There would definitely be like 2021, so juniors in high school that would have come to visit with their families on campus quite a bit, but I've just been calling as many people as I can, as well as my staff, and trying to do a lot of virtual tours of the school. The school Occidental's done a good job of setting up a lot of virtual panels kind of like this for people to find out more information. Like I said about everything in the fall, I'm just worried that we won't be able to do kind of normal recruiting trips where young people are able to come and meet the team and kind of be an Oxy student athlete. And I think that's kind of the crucial part of the recruiting experience where you decide if it's somewhere you can spend 4 years and really flourish. So I'm a little nervous about that.
And Greg, what about the recruiting situation for you?
Yeah, it's been completely different, that's for sure. We've had 3 commits for the fall that haven't been on campus. So that's something that is completely unknown. Like I've never done anything like that before. And the kids really, they're trying to find commitments and colleges to go to, and they're taking chances on schools that they never visited yet. So it's been different, but like Hallie said, there's different ways to show off your sport and show off your school. And we've done a good job with videos and virtual recruiting, and Zoom has been incredible, talking face to face. It feels like you're in, the family's living room. But in terms of actually scouting, hockey is unfortunately a little bit year round, and our recruiting is certainly mirrors our hockey season. So everyone's playoffs got cut short, and that's sometimes some of the best evaluations that a coach can get. So I missed from March till now all the best playoffs for all the different junior leagues and high school leagues and youth hockey leagues. So that was certainly a big evaluation from all the players that we didn't get and they didn't get. So that's been a big difference. And certainly we're currently in a dead period, meaning that we can't have any face-to-face contacts until middle of June. And there's no visits, and there's no games to see. And I think that's kind of fair, just in a sense that, some states are going to open up and some states are not, and they really don't want college coaches, racing around the country right now, unless everything is kind of on an equal playing field. And once America kind of gets back to a safe spot. So it's really been unusual to say the least.
Thank you. And Dan, so you're in a different situation with the fundraising. So I'm just curious, it's touchy-feely and it's a tough time to raise funds right now. So what are you doing during this downtime to prepare for when it becomes a better time?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I'll give you kind of some background. In fundraising, there are different phases, and there's identification, there's qualification, there's cultivation, solicitation, and stewardship. So that works from meeting someone to thanking them for the gift. And right now we're kind of doing a lot of this, taking care of people. We've kind of created our own piece of that, where this is the perfect time to check in with our alumni, with our friends, with our donors, see how everyone's doing, give them that added level of care and thoughtfulness. We've had so many donors tell us that we're the only place that's reached out, or thank you for being consistent. You know, we had one donor on a call with our external team that said, if you don't ask now, you will get left behind. Because this is the time when a lot of people who have means really want to help. They see the impact that this is making on the students, student athletes, programs and universities, and they want to help. And you'll never know if you don't ask. So it's really working on taking care of people, making sure that we know and we're aware of their situations, and then making sure that we let them know what's going on, like this, doing Zoom calls, because giving people the opportunity and places to give back and support the university is always going to be what we're going to try to do.
Thanks. And you touched on it before about working from home. So Greg, tell me what it's like working from home for you. What do you do? Watch videotapes? What are you doing with the team?
Well, the first few weeks, we had a lot of our end of the year meetings. So we had all the returners sit down with our coaching staff and have the end of year meetings. And it was just like this on a Zoom call with the four of us. And then we talked about our expectations and how the season went, et cetera. And then we had all our incoming recruits the following week. Same idea with the Zoom, talking about, you know, expectations and you know, what they're up to and academics and everything that happens leading up to your freshman year. But personally, this has been a tremendous time for just my personal growth as a coach. You know, we have a lot of downtime now. I'm not allowed to go on the road. I'm not allowed to, you know, to be honest, I'm not allowed to go onto the university campus. It was closed. It was a red for a while. So there are so many great videos that I've been able to watch and interviews and articles to read that I've really just kind of spent the last month just refreshing myself and getting you know, new ideas, talking to other coaches, and then, you know, just sharpening some other ideas about, you know, systems and big picture, small picture, identity, motivation, the whole length of topics you can talk about. And I had a meeting today with a coach in Canada talking about special teams. I have a meeting with a professional coach on Tuesday talking about systems and culture. So really for me, it's allowed me to use this time just to become a better coach and be prepared for when the inevitable time comes where we get to do what we love.
Thanks. And Haley, how about you? What's it like been working from home?
It hasn't been too terrible. I've just, like I said, been calling a lot of people and doing a lot of Zoom calls. Since we're a Division III school and we're not during our traditional season right now, I wouldn't have been able to do any coaching or have any official team meetings right now. So I have done some, like what we would do, like optional, like our strength coaches sent optional workouts for the team. And I've done some Zoom meetings with, we have different committees. We have a recruiting committee, a community service committee, and a motivation committee. So met with some of those athletes over Zoom, which has been fun, and just to catch up with people. But it's been nice, you know, to have some downtime personally. Obviously, it's terrible that it comes at the cost of what's going on in this pandemic. So I don't mean to make light of it, but certainly I've spent a lot of time watching TV while I've been home, definitely more than I would when I'm in the office and coaching people. But yeah, I mean, it's been, I think most people have been pretty resilient and been able to adjust to Zoom, especially with this, you know, like this generation that we're recruiting and coaching. I mean, they're so used to being on computers and phones and screens. So it wasn't terribly difficult for them to hop onto Zoom or, you know, we've done lots of TikTok and social media challenges and things like that. So there's been some fun involved.
Thanks. It's the same for Maccabi USA. We've been doing everything on Zoom. It's very easy to do. We even had some Zoom calls with Maccabi World Union, and it's very effective. It certainly changes things. So, you know, we all talk about returning to normalcy. Please, we'll never take for granted what normalcy used to be, and please come back. But I'd like to ask all three of you, what do you think are some of the ways that will change college sports forever based on what we've just gone through with the pandemic? Haley, I'll start with you.
That's a big question. I'm not sure yet. I mean, my hope is that there's some positive changes that are going to, you know, come through our country's culture and society that will affect athletics in terms of like what people have access to and access to college and therefore college athletics, especially at places like Occidental that are D3 and private liberal arts schools and expensive. So that's my hope, that we're able to give more opportunities to, you know, people of color, people of different socioeconomic spaces. I hope that makes a difference, but I don't know for sure. In terms of like competition specific, I just have no idea. Like, I certainly hope we go back to big crowds of people and fans. It seems crazy that we never would, but it's just hard to say right now.
Thanks. And Dan, do you see any permanent changes coming out of what we've just gone through?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the big things is accountability. I think right now everyone is looking at that more so than they have in the past, in the sense of knowing what you're doing, understanding what others are doing, and kind of taking perspective of situations. You know, for the big money schools, or for the, I guess you could say the Power Five schools as such, you know, they make their money from big crowds, sponsorships, eyes on their product. So really looking at it now, it's saying, and we don't know the full part, but coming from this situation, how are they going to be held accountable for scholarships, not cutting sports, which a lot of schools have done lately? You know, what kind of structural, I guess, deep changes are they going to make, and how are they going to hold themselves accountable? Because you can't just continue to cut sports in places if the whole point of our job, and mine specifically with fundraising for scholarships, is to support our student athletes.
Thank you. And Greg, what do you see as permanent changes?
Well, that's a good question. I think, again, my mentality is a short-term mentality. So we're talking about, possibly playing more regional games versus flying across the country. I think that's going to be something that, when is it going to be okay to fly on a plane with a team? We're talking about possibly not staying in as many hotels, more day trip games. We're talking about, if for sports, not like hockey, but other sports, maybe not use locker rooms. Can you get dressed on the bus and play and then come back and then shower up somewhere else? Like, things like that are being bandied about until we have a stronger grasp of what's really happening out there. So those are just little details of what college administrators are talking about, and trying to protect our student athletes and the coaches from what's out there. So potentially the fall could look a lot different, and potentially the winter and the spring can be too. I don't know if these are going to be permanent changes or they're going to be small detail changes. I know certainly there's going to be a lot more hand sanitizers in every athletic facility across the country.
Well, my son played high school hockey for 4 years. It's more than hand sanitizers. The smell of those uniforms just doesn't go away. I think we had to sell our house because we couldn't get rid of us. But I want to ask you, how do your athletes have access to rinks to skate right now?
No. So for the most part, just like everything else, everything's shut down. Everything's in the red, and there's no gyms, no ice rinks, nothing. So I've implored a lot of our players to just get outside and shoot pucks outside and work on their hands outside. Our strength and conditioning coach has given our players a body weight workout, which I tried for about a week and then quit because it was too hard. And certainly now that we've moved 8 weeks later, a few places like Texas and a few places down in some of the states that are opening up, those rinks are starting to open up, but there's stricter requirements. So you can't just have teams of 20 and groups of 40 people in the rink at a time. It's small groups, and they have to be in different types of locker rooms. And I don't know all the details for sure, but they're just starting to do a little bit of private lessons versus big group skates.
And Haley, how about you? Are any pools open for training at all?
I think just this past week in some states, pools have started opening up. Similarly, with a lot of guidelines, like one person per lane, and trying to keep that 6 feet apart. Because even though, just as one human in a pool, chlorine kills a lot, so it's fairly safe. But then when you get a bunch of people together, it's still contagious. I'm hoping in the next few weeks here we'll see some pools open up. I know people with backyard pools are feeling really fortunate right now because they've been able to, some of them have resistance cords and have been really creative. But a lot of people have gone a long time without having been in the water, which for the sport of swimming is kind of wild. I think probably this is the longest people have gone without swimming in maybe their whole careers. So it's kind of crazy, and I hope that they can get back in soon. I think like here, like I'm lucky to live in LA, like people have been able to swim in the ocean recently now. So that's been good. But people, the vast majority of the country who lives inland haven't had that opportunity.
Thanks. So I'd like to ask a question to all three of you is that right now everyone is disappointed, disillusioned, down in the dumps, and scared of what's going to happen in the future. So how do you motivate your staff and your athletes right now? Greg, I'll start with you.
Again, I think it's the best way to stay focused is just, stay present and stay in the short term. I have a family of 5. I have 3 young children and a wife, 2 dogs, and it's certainly I feel the same way. Going into a grocery store and putting a mask on and just seeing how different our world looks is really unique. And you can't walk away sometimes not feeling sad, going, I can't believe this is our new normal, what's happening. But that being said, I'm a hopeful person, and I believe that, eventually this is going to turn, and eventually we're going to have, confidence to do other things, and either whether it's just having the vaccine or whether it's just the confidence of being around people again, it will turn. I think we just have to be smart, and we can't just go from 0 to 100 and just disregard everything we've done in the last 2 months. I think we have to be smart, and we have to slowly integrate back and see what happens. But our staff has been pretty good. Our players have been very good. We're all on the same page. We just got to manage day to day. Work for our players. It's simply just working out and staying on their academics and staying safe. And then we'll just see what the fall looks like when we get there. But really, just focusing on getting through May right now.
And Haley, how about you? How do you motivate your athletes and your staff?
Yeah, so we certainly have talked about goals for our season and what we want to do in the fall, competition-wise. But we've also focused a lot on just being good people and kind of growing as human beings during this time, because I think that's something that you can kind of do and feel like it's a tangible goal that you can reach regardless of whether you're able to work out or get in a pool or come back on campus in the fall. Like all those unknowns, we try to say, okay, what can we accomplish if we don't get to do any of that? Especially for people who are going to be seniors, and it's just kind of crazy. So we focused a lot on just how we can be better teammates and better people, which has been something that it doesn't matter if you're in your house or wherever you are, you can do anytime, any day. So that's what we've tried to do.
Thanks. So Dan, you had a very positive outlook on fundraising right now, that now's a time with people with means really do want to help. But the converse of that is that there's a lot of people who have been really affected by this who really don't want to hear from you right now. So how have you motivated the people that you work with in your staff?
So for me, I think the motivator is really using my emotional intelligence. Right now, it's recognizing what everyone else is going through, especially the people I work with. And sometimes you can tell from the outside, sometimes from talking to them. And I think one of the really good quotes that I kept seeing on Twitter of all places was, you're not working from home, you're working at home during a pandemic. So those are 2 really different things. And being able to actualize that and understand, talking to my coworkers, not everyone's going to be able to work a 9 to 5. They may get tired earlier. There's no distractions. You're focusing so much harder on doing that work. So I think it's really just understanding everyone's situation is different, making sure that you do the best job that you can, and making sure that those that I work with know, we care about you. We're thinking about you. This is a tough situation, but you have to do your best, and you have to kind of manage expectations a little bit too. By, like I said before, realizing that everyone's different. Some people may be living by themselves, and it's really tough to be alone right now. Some people may have a full family, like Greg said, that, it's really tough to do everything and be with your family and take care of them. So I just think there's a lot of things going on, and really using that emotional intelligence is the biggest thing I use to motivate.
So here's what I'd like to ask you 3 of you. Haley, I'll start with you. If you're still competing and your sport was going to start after Labor Day, how would you feel? Is that too soon? Or
So you mean if like things just were able to go back to normal and we were able to?
How would you feel if they said, okay, we're going to go back at Labor Day?
I mean, no, I would feel great about that if it was safe and happening, because everybody would be in the same boat. So it's not like I would feel like because my swimmers wouldn't, have a good feel for the water because they've been out for so long, that would be true for everybody. So yeah, I'd be thrilled.
Greg?
Yeah, once we have permission that we can participate, I'm all in. We'll just have to follow the rules and what's, what the parameters of play means. But yeah, certainly if students are on campus and they're allowed to return and they feel comfortable returning, then I'm certainly ready to coach and ready to be around them. Whether it's I'm required to wear a mask in a locker room to start, or whether we have to dress in certain places, whatever. I'm ready to get on the ice and I'm ready to coach. And I'm excited to see some of the sports, professional sport teams come back. I'm excited to see some of the college spring practices starting. And I'm hoping that this is a good sign for the future, that this is we're heading in the right direction.
So tell me, Greg, I'll stay with you with eligibility. So the sports were canceled for the spring. What has the NCAA decided to do? What happens with eligibility?
Well, it's a two-pronged question. So the NCAA has granted all spring sports another year of eligibility. So if you're a spring sport athlete and you play baseball, you're now granted on that fifth year, or if you happen to be on a fifth year, granted a sixth year. The caveat is, the schools aren't required to allow you to have that sixth year. So it's the scholarship may or may not be there. That's the hard part. So the day that waiver went out there, they have something called the transfer portal, meaning where players can the student athletes can kind of transfer from school to school. That transfer portal actually went down for a few hours because there was just that many kids on the portal all at once, and so many coaches on there all at once. So in one sense, it's fantastic. The kids that got robbed or really wanted an opportunity to go back. I just read a Yale lacrosse player, which in the Ivy League, you never get granted a fifth year. They allowed him to come back and play that fifth year. And I think that's just a fantastic opportunity for him. For other student athletes that, want to go back for another year at their school, they're able to. And if they're not, then they're able to transfer somewhere else and hopefully continue to play. So it's unusual, but I'm glad the NCAA did the right thing with the COVID and allowed students to finish their careers.
So Haley, I want to ask you about the winter sports. Now, I'm involved with fencing, and I refereed through the whole season, and I did the ACC championships, the Ivy League championships. The teams all went to their regional qualifiers, and by the way, Ohio State was the favorite to win this year. And these athletes now, that was it. It ended. So do these people get an extra year of eligibility as well?
No.
No.
That was a hard no from the NCAA. Definitely, basketball, swimming and diving, fencing. Winter sports had asked for it, proposed the idea, but that was a hard no from the NCAA, which I can imagine being so difficult as a student athlete. But at the same time, they were able to compete and, like you said, 99% of their season. So such a bummer that they don't get that ending and that kind of the glory that comes from all the hard work that they did. But hopefully I always say as a coach to enjoy the journey. And this year I had to really ask myself if I meant it, since you didn't get that storybook ending that people get sometimes. So especially if it's Ohio State. But that's a bummer for those athletes that didn't get that final competition, but they're not going to be able to compete another year.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. We're going to run into it also in the Maccabee games that had been moved from 21 to 22. So we had two age categories, 18 and under, 16 and under. So now the people that turned 19 in 2022 who would have been eligible in 2021 are most likely going to be out of luck. I think in the broad scheme of what we're all going through in life, this should be everyone's biggest problem. But when you're an athlete and you're training, it's extremely, it's very difficult. Dan, what are your thoughts about the eligibility situation?
I think it's good. It's kind of like with, I had a red shirt my sophomore year because I had Tommy John surgery on my elbow. And if you kind of parallel it to that a little bit, I wanted to be competing, but I could not on a more personal level. And it stung. And it's tough because you feel like you're away from your team, just like it would for a student athlete now. you can't be there, you can't be with the people that you trust the most. And I can't speak from the perspective, but I'm happy that the student athletes were able to get the eligibility back and have that opportunity to continue. And just like Haley said, the winter sports, they were able to compete. It would be like if you didn't make it to the NCAA tournament.
Right.
You made it through, you didn't get that lucky break, but you got to have your general season.
So I had one more question I just wanted to ask you, to Greg and Haley specifically, because you're coaches. Whatever styles you've employed, whatever you have in you, do you see in any way, shape, or form that you're going to change your style and be more empathetic to the athletes? How do you view it, Greg?
I try my very best to understand where my kids are coming from, and there's certain kids that that need some tough love, and there's certain kids that they need a gentle arm. So I think certainly going forward, I've had some good conversations with some of our players that that are especially in New Jersey or Long Island, where they've been affected a little bit more seriously with COVID. Some of my Canadian players are in regions where there really aren't many COVID cases. So going forward, I think this is an experience that'll stay with everybody, adults, kids, forever, and they'll be talking about this years and years from now. So I think it'll all bring us together and really have a bonding experience.
And Haley, how about you? Do you see any change to your coaching philosophy or how you deal with the athletes?
I don't think too much change to my coaching philosophy. I've always been pretty empathetic. I think the biggest thing is just that it's a reminder to never take it for granted. I just miss my athletes, miss the people that I work with. So it's been tough, and hoping, everybody's staying happy and healthy. So that's been the hardest part. I don't think that too much has changed about my coaching philosophy, but definitely it's made me appreciate being a coach a whole lot.
So here's a question came in, Greg, from someone for you. He goes, let's test your memory. What was your experience like in 1997 when you played gold for Maccabi Canada and won the gold medal with Jacques Demers as your coach? What did the Israeli experience do for you, and how did it impact your life?
Well, number one, it changed my whole perspective on what it meant being a Jewish athlete. Growing up, even though I had lots of Jewish friends and family, I was always the only Jewish player on my hockey team. And it just was my existence that, I was the Jewish kid on the hockey team. So the first time that I was able to sit in the locker room, it was just a warm epiphany going, wait a minute, like, I'm not the outsider, I'm not the outlier. We're all the same. It was just an incredible experience being a Canadian Jewish hockey team, and then go to Israel. And for me, it was my second time, but for a lot of the guys, it was their first time. It was such a unique experience. And obviously having Jacques Demers as a coach, he was one of my idols growing up, but one of the best coaches in the National Hockey League. Having him coach you, and he was really, really good with our players. I'll still remember a time I made a save in practice, and he told me I had a glove as fast as Patrick Waugh, and just him saying something like that to me was I'll never forget that. He was an incredible coach, but he was really, really good in that experience and taking the whole experience in and communicating with the players and really having a good balance between the hockey and the Israel Connect. It was a phenomenal experience. That being said, playing in the gold medal game and winning is something that I'll never forget. Coming on the ice, and I expected. We were up in Metula, 2.5 hours north of Tel Aviv, Jerusalem. I didn't expect to have anyone there because the round robin was pretty sparsely attended, just family and friends. And then the gold medal game was packed. We had buses of people come up, and in warm-ups you had American flags and you had Canadian flags, and that was the first time I really represented my country in that type of environment where you had the USA chants and the Go Canada Go, and to win a game in that type of environment was incredible. And I got to wear the gold medal and exchange jerseys with the American and get a picture with my father and my mother carrying the trophy. That's something I still have. My mom still has that photo on her mantle, and it was a very, very special experience that years later brought me to coach the Maccabi USA experience, and it's certainly shaped me both as a player and a coach.
Thanks. That's one of the things that one of our common things that we've always said here. I see our our former president, Bob Spivak's on there, and he always used to say that how it changes lives. So Dan, how did your experience in Israel change your life?
So kind of like what Greg said, I grew up in New England, and, I had some Jewish friends and friends at Temple, but I never really had any teammates. I went to a Catholic high school, so there weren't any other Jewish teammates on the track team. And then when I went to college, that was something I was looking for. There's FCA, but I never found anything that was like that from a Jewish perspective. And I always longed for that. For whatever it meant, it was just such a deeper connection. And, finding out about Maccabi, getting to go compete, winning the gold medal, spending a whole year just continuing to train up for that. And also kind of like Greg said, being in a room, going to 3 or 4 different tracks, lifting at the university over there in the weight room, traveling around and just seeing all of these other Jewish athletes from the US and abroad. It was just like we all had this connection that I never felt before. It was just like that unspoken connection. Mm-hmm. Competition felt different. Meeting people felt different. It was just on a whole nother level. And then getting to win that and get that medal and hold the American flag and just share that love for the country and our culture and our religion. And it was kind of redefining, like it changed my whole perspective, and it was just a dream come true.
Thanks. And how about you, Haley?
Yeah, similarly, I grew up in Metro Detroit, so I had a big Jewish community growing up, and then when I went to college, I didn't even realize how fortunate I was, and then didn't have that at all in college. So between my junior and senior year, when I had the opportunity to go to Israel for the games, it was so wonderful to be around Jews from all over the world, but especially just from different parts of the United States. It's just so cool to, be a part of traditional Jewish events with Jews from all different places. That was one of the coolest things for me. And definitely for the swim meet, at least, it's kind of a funny feeling because when you get to the meet, it's kind of like USA versus Israel, but you've spent like 3 weeks in Israel, really respecting the country and understanding the heritage of your religion. But then once you get to the meet, it's really competitive, and those are your biggest adversaries. But especially because it's funny my roommate, when I was an athlete, swam for the United States. I think she was still in high school, but since has moved to Israel and competes for Israel now. So when I coached, I kind of coached against her, which was a funny feeling. But it's so much fun, and it's so incredible to be there with just Jewish people from around the world.
Thanks. So we have a question from one of our guests here, from Sami Pulley. Steve, can you unmute Sami? I think Sami has a question she'd like to ask. Go ahead, Sami.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for letting me ask my question, Jeff. So for our panelists, as coaches and directors of development, everybody has a budget and everybody has fundraising goals. With the loss of over $1 billion in March Madness revenue and the potential loss of football revenue this fall, many schools have had their athletic budget significantly impacted. Do you expect that scholarships for Division I athletes will be cut, additional team coaches and staff will be let go, and other significant changes will be made in the way in which department programs will run?
Yeah, Sami, that's a great question. I think those are all big picture, questions, and everything that you've talked about has been talked about, within our university, within our conference, within the NCAA, and I think the fear is that, yes, those are all potential worst case scenarios. The worst case scenarios that are all the seasons can be canceled. There won't be football. We won't have sports for an entire year. And if that happens, worst case scenarios are what's going to happen to private schools or state schools that need that kind of funding. So I think everybody's on that page. Well, what's going to happen if we don't have students come back to campus? So again, I think from an administrator perspective, I think everybody, and from a coaching perspective, I think everybody wants to have students on campus. I know I just filled out a survey for my kids asking, would I feel comfortable for my kids to go back to school in the fall in either a full go 9 to 5 at school, B, stay at home and just do remote learning, or C, a hybrid. And I think realistically, I think there's going to be some sort of hybrid model where you're going to have students live on campus, take some classes, or you can commute and take some classes will be on campus and some classes will be from remote. But eventually we have to get back to a place where we can feel comfortable being in a room together. We have to feel comfortable going to a game together. And I don't know how, I don't know what the answer is to that, but eventually we're going to have to get to a place where, we get back to normalcy again. And otherwise, yeah, though, if we have a year where there's no ability to go to movies or pro sports or movie theaters or anything, then yeah, our entire American economy is going to crumble, and that's going to be devastating. So I think everyone, understands the difference between, safety and not. But I think, from the NCAA perspective, I think, the fear is everything you talked about. But realistically, I think we're all holding out hope that as we get through the summer, that all the prognosticators are going to be wrong, and that, the second wave won't be as bad as they're hoping, and that we will have students back on campus. And right now we're planning on that. We're planning on having, status quo, students on campus in September and fall sports ready to roll. But that being said, we're also preparing for potentially, having, different scenarios, shorter seasons or fall sports moving to spring, etc. So I think the fall is too far away to kind of figure out what's going to happen. But that being said, everyone is having different scenarios and waiting to see what we can and can't do.
Thanks, Greg. So before we wrap up, Haley and Dan, Haley, you have anything you want to finish up by saying here before we say goodnight?
No, just thanks for having me. It's been, it's always fun to have people to talk to or talk at least. Yeah, just hopeful that kind of like Greg said, that, people stay happy and healthy and we're able to get back to doing some athletics.
Thanks. And Dan, how about you?
It's an honor to be on here. It was an honor to compete, and just thanking you guys for having me on here. And just like everyone else, I'm hoping sports will come back. Everyone's on a shoestring right now, hoping and worrying that they'll come back in the fall. And if we do, we're just going to have to adapt and figure out how to get more eyes on the product. And I think that some beautiful things could come out of that.
Thanks. So I find it ironic that you guys are thanking us for having you on. It's the other way around. First of all, thank you for being part of our Maccabi USA family. We hope you'll be part of our family forever. And we thank you for taking the time to join us tonight and give us the insight. It was terrific. And I